Hi there, it's Kevin with the Rogue Deck Builder here with this week's episode of the Market Mondays. So this week I'm going to talk about Ikoria and where the dust is going to settle with this set. I think there are definitely some undervalued cards and overrated cards as far as price is concerned. Now, this discussion came up on our Discord. One of the perks of being a patron is you do get access to our Discord, and it's very vibrant. There's a lot of discussions in the various different forums. And one of the more popular one is the Rogue Market channel, where we discuss all things market related to Magic the Gathering. So one of the discussions that came up there was where some of these prices, especially companions, are going to settle with Ikoria. Now, the rule of thumb in Magic the Gathering is unless it sees a 4 of in multiple formats, a rare cannot go above the $5 price tag unless it sees play in Commander. And it just goes to show exactly how much pressure Commander puts on the market, and where a 1 of in a popular Commander deck has more to effect on the price of a card than a 4 of in Standard does. And there have been many different examples of this. I like to talk about the not Sylvan Carriage. What's the elf, the 2/3 elf that had vigilance and then got +2/+2 for whenever you hit above 5 lands. That was a 4 of in Standard, but didn't see any other play outside of Standard. And that card had a hard time hitting a price tag above like $2 to $3. And in the current Standard, we saw Lovestruck Beast. That's one of and Bone Crusher Giant. This is pre Challenger decks, so before they were reprinted in Challenger decks. Those two had a very, very tough time going over like $2 to $3. I remember the Lovestruck Beast went all the way down to a quarter at one point when it was seeing play as a 4 of in the Standard, in a very popular Standard deck at the time. So we're going to talk about Ikoria, and I'm going to make those judgments based upon where I see these cards for the near future as well as long terms. And then we're going to take a look at the cards that are seeing play in Commander. And like I said, I think there are some cards that are going to be very, very good long term, and there are definitely some stinkers. And when going back to the discussion of companions, I am putting companions in the stinker category just because of where they currently sit as 1 ofs. And even though, like Yorion, for example, is seeing so much play throughout Standard, it is $2.20, and I think that's very, very realistic for Yorion, as it's just a 1 of, even though it's seeing 60% in decks across Pioneer and Standard. It's still just a 1 of, and that's not enough pressure, whereas particular Commander cards have a better time of going up if they are 1 ofs in very popular or have a lot of cross use across multiple different commanders. So let's go back to some recent sets here, and I'm going to show you the Standard cards and show you exactly what I mean by this this topic here with Commander. So if we go back to Throne of Eldraine, some of the cards that have been able to start to go up in value have been the cards that do see play across multiple formats. Let's see if we can find a good one here in Rare. The castles have all been pretty good. They were reprinted, though, in the Challenger deck, so they all are needing to recover. But those are typically ones that hit cross-format play. And even though most of them don't see 4 ofs in Standard, they do comparatively have a higher price tag. Ayara is a good example of a card that sees a lot of play in EDH that does have a $2 price tag and sees next to nothing right now. There aren't a lot of like mono black decks or aristocrat decks that actually care about Ayara in the Standard, and it's still a $2 price tag. So there's a good example of a card that can hold its value. And then of course, like Fabled Passage, having the double dipping of being played in Commander and in Standard is why the card is $12. So one of the other ones from Theros, let's take a look at Theros because there's a better example of cards that see play in Commander. So Hydra's Growth, that was an interesting one for the uncommon being 61 cents, and this doesn't see any play, but it is such a popular card in the Commander format that it's actually able to be worth money. So the one that does really stand out here is the Dryad of the Elysian Grove. So this is an $8 card. It does see some play here and there in Modern. However, most of the pressure is coming from Commander. So these are the type of cards that this one didn't have the... This is pretty known. So you can see the pre-release price of this was actually... the pre-release price of this card was actually quite substantial, the pre-order price, and it's been able to hold its $8 price tag and even slightly start to go up. So this one was a known that it was going to be very popular in Commander. This one also had this initial pressure of people that wanted to throw it in the modern decks. So this is kind of a crummy example of cards you could invest in right at the release for them to go up. A better one would be Smothering Tithe. So let's look at Smothering Tithe and exactly how that card. And then we'd also have the Guardians Project, which is another one. So this card came off the, let's see if we can get a, there we go, get it to go back a little bit more. All right, let's just go to the regular version here. So initial release, it was $2. So this is a card that people knew was going to be powerful in Commander, but it still was standard as the big purchases right out the gate. So people cracking boxes, they all unloaded them on TCG Player and eBay, and this was the going price of what Commander was stretching it. But eventually, this card did spike back up in value when the early supply of these $2 cards ran out. And then you can see this had a nice trajectory, or it was probably going to head up towards a nice trajectory until it was reprinted in the Brawl decks. And now the Brawl decks have lost their... there aren't any Brawl decks really in sealed form anymore that are being purchased, and so Smothering Tithe is back to going back up in value. With a Guardian Project, and we can see a very similar effect here, that this was basically a bulk rare coming out of the initial pre-orders, that no one really seemed to care about it. It just wasn't playable in Standard, and this just went up, 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 up. There's another one in the form of Return to Wildspeak. Return to Wild, Return of the Wild Speaker. There we go. That is following that trend. So it's a couple months behind of where the Guardian Project was. So you see that initial boost here. We're about like right here-ish with the Return of the Wild Speaker. So I'm expecting this one to follow that similar trajectory with Guardian Project. And inevitably, there are these cards that are released with every sets, and those are the good ones that you can see that one-ofs from Commander have a better job of going up in value than 4-ofs in Standard. So let's just take a 4-of card from sets like Return to Ravnica or Ravnica Allegiance and give it a comparison, since we did find some cards from Ravnica Allegiance. So let's see the first one. Here's a good example. Here is a very popular 4-of card right now in Standard. Sees a ton of play in Lurrus decks and other Aristocrats decks. It is very, very popular. I don't believe it didn't have any Commander reprintings, did it? Or Challenger decks? What was a Challenger deck? Maybe it did in this one. But still, you'd expect this one if Standard was the big reason that cards go up in value. And let me tell you, this card actually does have some relevance in Commander. I think it's a very good Commander card. It's a sacrifice card, which makes it so you can actually make the hexproof and indestructible commanders die with Priests of Forgotten Gods. It's very versatile, and this is a very popular theme in the black, especially black-white shells in Commander. So I think that Commander alone would be a good reason for Priests of Forgotten Gods long-term, but its Standard has really been driving the price of this card. So I guess this probably was Challenger deck right here, right? Why it got reprinted and then it got crushed in value. Let's find a non-Challenger deck one real quick, and then we can make a comparison to, let's see, a 4-of. There's a good one. There's a good Kaya's Wrath's a 4-of in many decks that just doesn't have the price to back it up. We have Gutter Bones. That one did have I believe had a Challenger deck. I think Kaya's Wrath had a Challenger deck. Man, they just hit everything. They had 4-of copies in here. But Deputy of Tension, there's another one that sees quite a bit of competitive play. Absorb, there's a very good example of a card that sees a lot of competitive play, that can't crack that $5 mark and is staying kind of stagnant within its standard season, having a hard time to going up once the dust settles and people actually do create their decks. Again, I can't remember, this one quite hit Challenger decks. I think they hit most of the cards from that are relevant right now in Standard from Ravnica Allegiance around that price period. If we look at, let's go over to War of the Spark and see if there's one like Oath of Kaya. That sees a lot of play in multiple different decks. And that pretty much is... Here's a good one. This is a pretty good, like Narset's Reversal, doesn't see any play in competitive decks whatsoever. And this is another card, I bet, if we look at EDH Rec, let's go ahead and actually take a look at EDH Rec and see where Narset's Reversal actually falls in how many decks it actually sees play in. and see if it's Commander that's actually, and so it's in 16,000. Yes, okay, so perfect example of Commander and exactly how Commander has the effect on the market. The Narset's reversal has been able to crack the $5 price tag mark, and it's because it is a Commander card. It's completely Commander card and not a competitive card. And so those are the cards we want to look at. So let's go back now. We've established kind of the rules for prices here. Let's take a look at Ikoria and see where we're at. First of all, let's look at how is Ikoria doing. Not so hot. In fact, this is one of the worst prices that I've seen that we're not even a month old. So you can say, okay, well, the Japanese markets had this out, so a lot of the supply actually was able to enter into the U.S. markets earlier than normal. However, this still, if you compare it to other sets, after their initial releases, they've been able to hold their value for a lot longer than the Ikoria has been able to do. And Ikoria is just crash in value. And you got to really think that the main supply started entering in about this week. So it's gone from $100 all the way down to $50. And other sets was kind of the opposite. You'd see the EV of a booster box being like $130, and then it get half down to about $65 or $70. So Ikoria is getting hit way harder than most standard sets. In fact, it's the second lowest standard card, and you have to actually make the argument that Eldraine's in a better position than Ikoria, because Eldraine had the massive amount of reprints in the Challenger decks and has been able to recover, whereas Ikoria is going to continue to go down as more product is entered. So it's not looking too hot. Which is a good sign for the cards long term, because usually when a set hits these really low values, then they have a chance of actually recovering because people don't continue to buy them looking for specific cards that they need. So when there's like a Euro that's a $45 card, you got to expect that Theros Beyond Death is going to continue to be opened at a higher rate when the dust settles in Ikoria. If we actually look back, though, at sets that did pretty bad, having an ability to recover, take a look at what's happening on with Rivals of Ixalan. So we have Rivals of Ixalan that was kind of a stinker, had a hard time being sold. Ixalan sold much better than Rivals of Ixalan, and now Rivals of Ixalan is actually one of the most valuable Pioneer sets. And this has mainly to do with what a stinker this was coming out of its release, and just the lackluster effect that it had on people wanting to buy booster boxes. In fact, look, it's actually outpaced Eldritch Moon and outpaced basically everything but Khans of Tarkir. So it's even above Theros. So we have Return to Ravnica, and we have Khans of Tarkir that hold more value in Pioneer than Rivals of Ixalan. But Rivals of Ixalan is, catching up quickly, and it's mainly because it's kind of a dud of a set. So Ikoria does have that going for it for long term, especially for like Commander cards, if this set does end up being not opened as much as the other sets around it. So I always call it like the Dominaria effect or the War of the Spark effect. Both of those sets are some of the most open sets of all time. And in fact, Khans of Tarkir is in that as well, but most of the value is being tied up in Shocklands. So if we go back over now with Ikoria, I think that there are some undervalued cards and there are definitely some overvalued cards. So let's talk about the Triomes. I actually think that the Triomes are going to go down a bit more, but if they do go under that $5 mark, I think it's time to actually start investing in the Triomes or Triomes, or however. I'm sure some of the comment section will tell me how to pronounce it correctly. But if you look here, if we go over to the most played cards in Ikoria for Commander, you can see that these are going in basically any deck that can, 50% of all decks that are eligible to use them, meaning the 3 colors, they're putting them in. And in fact, you have unless you're playing really strict competitive EDH where you don't want any tap lands under no circumstances, and there are plenty of decks that actually do want that, even tricolor, this is probably your best option for a tricolor land. It has some very relevant being the land types, meaning that any fetch land can actually tutor this up. And if you don't need the mana for that turn, you can easily crack a fetch land to go grab one of these, and you have your land, your mana base basically solidified, the 3 mana for that particular deck. And when you're looking into 4 and 5 color, I guess 5 color commanders, these are very important for finding those particular color combinations and it just makes them leaps and bounds over the other options because of this ability to be fetched up. So I like these long term. I really, really like these long term. I'm actually very surprised. I thought that these suckers were going to be able to hold $8 to $10 price tag for much longer. So if we see these particular ones start to dip down even lower, I think these are good buys. We can look at, so the thing about EDH is you need to check out this number, not this number. So the most played cards are probably not even going to be these Triumphs. If we look here, yeah, there's so 1,100. Yep, actually they are the Triumphs, are the most played so far. But if we look at the first monocolored card, it is this Dranith Magistrate. The price tag though is still pretty high for a commander pickup. If we go over to another monocolored, so these ones you can't, the Mythos you can't consider monocolored. Man, not a lot of monocolored. It's Migration Path is the first one that comes up, and the Bastion of Remembrance. Both of these are great uncommons if they do go down to very low prices. Migration's Path is very similar to, I want to say Kadatha's Reach, but what's the card that does the exact same thing except without cycling? That's a card that gets reprinted over and over and over and can easily go up to the $1 price tag before it gets another reprint, or even $2 before it gets another reprint. So Migration's Path is definitely a pickup long term if these do go down to like a quarter. It looks like Card Kingdom already is starting to anticipate that with the higher price tag at 69 cents compared to the TCG mid price. If we look at some of the other most played cards, this Ominous Seas one is pretty interesting as well, even though it is another uncommon, as it's in 618 deck. And the Luminous Broodmoth, I think, is going to be the card that you should really start to focus on. It had a huge hype that it was going to just be really, really good in Modern, and it still has yet to prove itself in Pioneer and Modern once companions are out of the mix, if we go into strategies that actually want to use the Luminous Broodmoth. But this is a good example of a card that I think is going to age very, very well, and if it goes down under that $7-6 mark, it's a very, very good pickup, as it's being played in 10% of all white decks that are eligible to play it right now have thrown in the Luminous Broodmoth. Very, very powerful card. These particular cards do seem to do quite well over time, and this being a mythic even gives it more perks to go in it. Gem Razor is another one. Gem Razor just looks like a huge pickup to begin with because of the amount of standard play that this card sees. So it's whenever it mutates, you destroy an artifact or enchantment. So it's a 3-mana mutate. Might be a little bit harder than like the other cards that do a similar effect. Other than you do get a 4/4. I don't know how relevant that is in Commander. However, if you have other things that do mutate this card, it can't be blinked like some of the other ones. So I don't know, age-wise, how well Gem Razor will age because of the whole blinking factor if you compare it to the other cards that do a similar thing of when they enter the battlefield. However, though, this is getting the double dipping factor of Commander being played in 9% of decks that it's eligible in, and Standard is just playing this card like crazy. If we look at some, let's try to find another good rare here. Neutralize, these cards are always ones that go up in value eventually. Not a lot of other stuff though. It does seem like this set did have a lot of multicolored cards rather than monocolored. Not a lot of even artifacts here. The Ozolith is still a little bit overvalued with how it's seeing play as one-ofs in various Pioneer and Modern decks. But yeah, I guess there's not too many here that look too exciting for the Commander format. So that would be my takeaway here. Is there's plenty of cards that I think are very overrated. First of all, the companions like Lurrus, the Dream Den. If you look at most of these cards, they are seeing one-ofs. Some decks will throw Lurrus in the main, but the vast majority of these ones, I wonder if the banning the companion mechanic will make these actually more sought after. Right now, of course not, because Lurrus is just breaking. There will be less decks that probably want to include Lurrus in the 60 rather than have it as a companion. Mark Rosewater's pretty tiffy about someone comparing companions, especially Lurrus to Black Lotus, that Lurrus is on the same power level as Black Lotus because instead of free mana, you're getting a free card. And Mark just didn't seem to get the analogy because nothing can be as broken as Black Lotus, but that is where these type of cards have been affecting the older formats. And even I would even make the argument that I was very disappointed, and other people were very disappointed that nothing happened for Standard and Pioneer. The justification was there was enough data out there to support that these we're warping the formats. But if you, I don't know, give it another week, it seems like even in the past week, the decks have become more and more streamlined towards either Yorion or Loris decks. You're running, or the red-black commander. You are running or companion. You are running companion in standard or pioneer, or you're just not being competitive. So some of the other cards, let's look at the mythics. I think most of these mythics are destined to go down. The Kinon's Bonder Prodigy hasn't really proven itself in Commander. Like, there isn't nearly as much. Yeah, how many do I have to scroll down? Like, Parcel Beast is actually, yeah, it's actually not that much included. How popular? It's the second most popular, though, for commanders. Yeah, it's going to be, I definitely think it will be a popular commander, so it's got that going for it. I'm surprised, though, that it hasn't been included in... Did I miss it here? Of how many? Let's click on the card, so see how many just decks it's in. As a card, it's in 546. That's actually pretty good. So this one, it probably does justify its price tag right now. And in fact, when the dust settles, yeah, I do think that these are going to be the top 3 for the set. They're going to be the cards that are going to be the most sought after. It's only a matter of time before I think Vivian is broken in one of the competitive formats, and Luca is starting to do some crazy stuff in various formats as well. So their price tags are kind of iffy here. I think they're right on par. So the rares that I think, yeah, most of them have really adjusted from this set. There's not a lot of cards that are overhyped right now. So that would be the big trick, is to find that card that might be lagging behind for the commander, whether it be like Gemrazor, like we talked about, or if it is these Triomes, because it seems to me that this is a bad sign for Ikoria, that if the cards have gone down this far already for the rares, that... And there's quite a bit of rares that do see play, but even with something like the shark, the Shark Typhoon, already down to $3.50. I guess you can compare to like Elsith Conquers Death, though, and that's like a $1 card. So this one probably does still, even if it does see a 4 of play, would have to have that justification for Commander to really start to step it up as far as the price is concerned. But anyway, I hope this video is kind of making sense of how I evaluate cards. This is what I try to do with every set, and it's a good, at least a thought experiment. It helps train your mind for looking for patterns and getting ahead of trends. And that's why I highly, highly encourage anyone that's in the Magic the Gathering Finance or into that whole buying and selling. What it kind of sets you apart from some of the more notorious people that just flip sealed product. If you do play the game, you will have an edge when it comes to singles cards. I get that you can just flip reserve list cards because they have a bit of padding with which they can never be reprinted again. Well, we put that in quotations because who knows what Wizards will do. They've been outclassing a lot of them to begin with, some of the reserve list cards, or they've just been adding like snow onto it, or adding a little bit of a nuance here to make it different enough that it gets around the reserve list. And I think that will end up dumbing down the reserve list quite a bit long term with those particular cards. But if you do play the game, if you do check out, like if you do play Commander, there's another huge a one step up over other people in this game as far as finance is concerned, that you can get ahead of trends. So E&H Rec is always a website that I check very, very frequently. Dongler is another one to get a kind of a feel for where the overall EV is, because there will be a reflection of how many people are actually going to continue to crack boxes. If Ikoria continues to go down below that $50 mark, I highly doubt the boxes are going to sell like they have. This has ended up being a pretty decent set as far as sales is concerned. I give it 2 factors. One, there wasn't any massive pre-release attendances, so people instead just bought booster boxes. The other factor is they come with box toppers, which I actually do think help the set sell quite a bit. And 3, I think the stimulus check really helped Ikoria booster boxes sell comparatively to the counterparts that were released before it. So we'll have to wait and see. how this set will age, but I don't think that it's going to age well, and it's going to give some of these targets that are they're dirt cheap right now some room to grow. So I do like Loomis Brewdog, just probably not. I think that we still have another week or two to allow this card to go down, and then these are good pickups long term. And I still do like the lands. I think the lands, if they get below 5, if they get below 4, if you consistently get on them at 350, I think they're great pickups. Keep in mind, challenger decks could throw a wrench into these particular cards, but they're going to be for years and years to come probably the best tri-lands to add to your commander deck, just because of the synergies they have with fetch lands. So anyway, not a huge topic for today. Just wanted to let you know a little behind the scenes of how I do the MTG Finance game. And let me know in the comment sections if you have any tips or tricks for new sets and getting ahead of those trends. This has been Kevin with the Rogue Deck Builder. Thanks for watching.